Welcome to the real world.
Are you ready to talk about The Matrix 3?
Yes.
A movie that you totally remember everything that happened in?
Yes. Just ask a series of yes or no questions.
Mike Thomas, did you enjoy The Matrix Revolutions?
Yes.
Mike Thomas, did you feel that there was a satisfying conclusion to the path of Neo?
Sure.
That's not a yes or no. This is the Sky Scorchers, episode 3. We are here to talk about The Matrix Revolutions. My name is Matt Waters. I'm joined by Mike Thomas, founder of The Real World. How are you right now?
I'm doing well overall, I think. I've got multiple vacations coming up, which I'm excited about. And we're about to talk movies. And talking movies on the phone with you is always pretty fun.
Aw, Mike. That might be the genuinely nicest thing you've ever said to me. I'm taken aback.
That'd be the nicest thing I've ever said to anyone.
Quite possibly, I don't know. So this is The Matrix Revolutions, released November 5th, 2003, so 6 months after Reloaded. The Wachowskis wanted to do it a few weeks afterwards, and Warner Bros. Taught them out of that. I thought in my head it was a year apart, like how, the Avengers films are coming out a year apart, all that sort of stuff, but no, 6 months. And it didn't make a ton of money. I mean, it made $427 million, which, if you offered me that, of course I'd bite your hand off. But that's about as much as the first one, which was an unknown quantity, and a lot less than Reloaded. You can put that down to, people not liking Reloaded. You can put it down to it coming out so soon after Reloaded versus, the hype of so many years after the first one. You can put it down to the fact they did a worldwide release, to the minute. It came out in sync around the world in 50 different places. And also there was a 66% drop-off in week 2, so word of mouth. I mean, this is the least well-regarded of the three, I think it's fair to say. I think people make fun of the second one the most, but I think they still like it more than this one because not good to do so much less money. But enough of all that information. Mike, what are your just broadest possible thoughts on this? Because this was your second time seeing it, and you said you didn't really remember anything that happened.
I remember in vague, broad strokes what had happened. There wasn't anything that happened. I was like, what? Literally, the only thing like that was I thought Gina Torres did not appear in this movie.
Oh, of course
my memory was that she was only in the Reloaded, not Revolution. So I was like, what? Gina Torres is here.
Yeah.
That was, some of this, I couldn't remember if the council was, died. I couldn't remember what happened to Harry Lennox. But overall...
I don't think you find any of those things out, to be honest.
Yeah. But probably, broad strokes, this did go as I remembered. But I think if I'm talking just generally about it, this feels so stripped down.
Barely anything happens. It's the shortest one by 10 minutes. It feels even shorter than that, compared to the others, because there's genuinely about 3 plot points. It's Neo's stuck, we'll go get him. Zion's fucked, let's try and save it, and then Neo versus Smith. And it's okay. And everything else feels like they're just here we go, towards the end. It's coming now, here it comes.
I would say, I think the most jarring thing is probably that middle section of the film where they essentially leave Neo off screen and are just doing the Battle of Zion with a bunch of characters I think, largely speaking, they failed to get us invested in.
Yes.
And
not a lot.
It was very, very jarring watching it this time. Just from constructing this film, editing this film, just thinking about it from that perspective and coming to this decision to be okay, let's forget about Neo for I don't know. I should go back and time it, but it felt like at least 20 to 30 minutes. It felt like a real significant chunk of the movie where we just have no idea what's going on with the characters we care about.
In some ways, it feels like a compromised film in that it almost was like they were responding to some of the criticisms of Reloaded. And I'm not saying that they were or read anything about them doing that. They don't seem like the type of filmmakers who would do that. But this doesn't feel like a sequel to Reloaded. It really just feels like the final act of Reloaded that was just lopped off of Reloaded.
It doesn't feel like a full movie's worth of story.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of, it's interesting, how do you construct sequels, because, we live in an age where it seems like there are infinitely more sequels. I would imagine that the data actually backs that up, that, we have a ton of franchises going on at the same time. So how these sequels are formed is kind of like a constant source of, debate or discussion or thought. And this one feels very odd. That first, the Neo rescue scene feels pretty useless.
Yeah, it's just sort of paint by numbers Matrix stuff.
Yeah,
like it feels like they're doing an impression of themselves almost.
Yeah, it kind of epitomizes the idea that where the action just becomes for the sake of the action that we were talking a lot about in Reloaded. And it's like, okay, we get to see Morpheus and Trinity shoot guns one final time.
She even repeats like the crane kick and everything, and you've got the pillars and everyone flying around. It's much like the lobby scene in the first one, and yeah, it's a bit derivative if you ask me.
Yeah, and then the stuff with the Merovingi kind of feels obligatory. It feels like, okay, well, we had all these characters in the first movie. Or the second movie. I guess we need to have them again. And
they set him up as when they built their world out. They were like, "What's our sort of second biggest bad guy or whatever?" So I feel they wanted to make him feel important and have him show up again. Like he's a good.
Yeah.
I feel he was a good way to write themselves out of some holes or whatever, or like a shortcut to like, oh well, he just has access to everything. He's the guy that would have what they need. So off they go to his nightclub, and Trinity just uses a Mexican standoff to beat him, even though he has the entire advantage.
Yeah, and I thought the only interesting part about that was Monica Bellucci, like kind of being like, yeah, she's totally willing to kill everyone here. Like that moment felt earned, but in the context of this movie, it felt
yes. Monica Bellucci also defying the laws of physics with her cleavage. As a straight man, that was too much boob. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And then, the twins not being like a threat in any way. Like,
they're dead. They ghosted into the sky.
Yeah. That it just
felt like,
and then their conductor felt
the
very
train man.
That felt very, I don't know. There was an element of like Guillermo del Toro in these Matrix sequels where it's like, what can't we do?
Yeah.
Well, let's do it all then. Let's see everything. Let's see this entire world. And instead of like weird creatures, it's what's the weirdest quote unquote computer program we can come up with for the Matrix. And I don't know. I'm not.
It felt like they were saying goodbye to that sort of quadrant of the narrative world that they'd only just introduced, but it's in a lot. With Reloaded and the video game and the Animatrix and all this stuff they introduced, they made it a big deal very quickly. So, like, the legacy of that character isn't huge, because it's like, oh yeah, that French dude in the Matrix. But, like, for the people that were, like, obsessed with this stuff, they did make it a big deal, and it was them just sort of like, forget about it now, though. This is over with.
And I think that's an important point, because it can, for me personally, The Matrix was not the universe that made me go, I need to know everything. I want to know everything about what's going on in this universe.
And I'm not ashamed to admit, I was one of those. Like, I was very obsessed with like learning every little bit about it, like doing lots of reading, and it was a phase in my life. It's over. I now look at this and I'm like, some of it's good, dumb fun. But yeah, once upon a time, I was big into like the way they built this world out. But it's weird seeing how little like the Merovingian is in these two films, and like these characters.
And for sure, in some ways, I mean, especially once you're introduced to it and Reloaded, it does feel like, the universe is like, oh, obviously there's a lot more going on here than what was going on in The Matrix, but I don't know if they're as good at telling those stories as they were with The Matrix, which was just, I mean, even though it was longer than Revolutions, it still feels like this tighter story overall.
Yeah, very well paced, whereas this is like, it's struggling to connect its dots, I think.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is, at the end of the day, they introduced us to a lot of characters and we did not care about them.
No. Like Zion, like I remember my biggest disappointment with this movie is how much of it is not in The Matrix, and I get that's a very deliberate choice because you spend almost the entire second movie in The Matrix. Like there's, other than like that sweet cave rave and whatnot, it's almost entirely in The Matrix. And you know, when I was a teenager, that was the cool shit I wanted to see. I wanted to see the people in the sunglasses and the leather, like doing all the martial arts and gunplay and stuff. And I figured when I came back to watch this, I was like, I bet as an adult I'll appreciate this Zion stuff more, but you just don't really care about a lot of those people.
No.
Like, I kind of like the Z and Chara the little duo when they're trying to shoot the drill, but other than that, like, everyone else is like, I don't care.
Yeah, and I think that kind of describes it for me too. Is like I almost wanted to care more, but you know, they didn't really invest a lot of time of it in Reloaded. So I think that they were asking a lot of us to care suddenly so much in Revolutions, and it's like, yeah, the on the field general guy.
Mifune,
seems like a compelling badass type of like military character, but really,
but they were telling, not showing. Like, oh, he's pissing metal, and like he's the only one left, and all that. It's like,
yeah,
I need more
like,
from this.
Yeah, I really did not like Fake Mouse. He kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
His character name is Kid. I love it. Yeah, he's.
I mean, almost. I mean, there's that with his official character name being Kid, and then you know the I guess the boss machine being called Deus Ex Machina. There's almost like a parody element of this that feels wildly inappropriate, but like at the same time mildly amusing. 15 years later, with some distance and certain lack of investment.
Yeah, and I think the stuff they did with Locke that we covered last time, where they put Locke in a position to fail because he's just needless.
He's just wrong about fucking everything.
But then he's also right. But then he's also like he is right about the EMP thing. But then it's like, all right, but no need to be.
But also, like,
about
he's
it.
Right. But there was nothing else they could have done. It was like, okay, absolutely. Do you die now or do you die 15 minutes later? Like, you're getting on your high horse because you're all going to live 15 minutes longer? I mean, if they didn't blow the EMP, everyone was going to die right then and there.
Yeah, and like they defined a large part of his character around arguing with potentially the coolest motherfucker in this universe, Morpheus, and also being like the jealous boyfriend or whatever. It's all just putting him in a bad... And he's like in charge of the defense of the city, of, you know, everyone you're supposed to care about. And it's like, if you don't like him, it's like, what do you want to happen here? Do you want the machines to win? Do you want this guy to be right? Like,
yeah, and I mean, Niobe was another character that, you know, I really like Jada Pinkett Smith. She's usually pretty compelling. But again, who is she? What does...
I think she's much better in this one than in Reloaded. I think she's... I don't know. I think the stuff where she's on the ship giving shit to Morpheus and Captain Roland, I thought that was all good stuff. Like when she's like, you know, I can fly that, and like saying how the ship has a fat ass and stuff like that. I thought that was good stuff. I thought she's like shaky in Reloaded.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really worth disagreeing with that. I guess like I don't care enough to disagree.
Okay, I just remember she doesn't really have any like memorable moments for me in the second one, aside from like catching Morpheus on a car. Whereas some of my favorite lines in this film are from her. So maybe that's just a lack of competition. But I remember her more from this one.
But yeah, and then I guess, you know, broadly speaking, Neo, I think Keanu does a really good job here. I think I was very invested in him by the end in a way that I did not remember being invested the first time around. So I guess in some ways that, you know, when I say sure earlier, was it a satisfying conclusion to Neo? I think probably yes.
Gets to be the white savior, gets to be the sacrifice.
He's half white. He is half white. Calm down. Don't.
Thomas Anderson seems like he's just a white dude, though.
Yeah, don't erase his East Asian heritage, but yeah, I don't know. All right, what about you? What are your broad, general thoughts?
I mean, I think we've hit a lot of them. That it just seems like there's not quite enough material here to get a full movie out of it, and you know, you start with quite a lame Matrix sequence, and then you go to Zion for what seems like a really long time, and then you come back to, and you know, because in the background of this, Smith has taken over ostensibly the entire Matrix. I don't know if every single thing in it is Smith at this point, but that's kind of the impression they give. And he gets that one scene to be a bit menacing when he's like coming for the Oracle and Seraph and the kid, but then it's like, you just know that Smith is there, and Neo shows up, and they're just waiting for him, and it feels a bit stilted, I guess, like that.
Yeah, It was really. That's another thing I guess I didn't fully remember about thinking of the sequels as a whole, is that Smith isn't really doing a lot in these movies. Like, he's kind of just an idea.
He's on screen a lot in the second one, and this one I feel like they were like, we know we want it to end up, but we don't think there's much really here to do, so... Yeah, he gets to take over a kid, but... He's
a certain amount of screen time in two, for sure, but he feels like a sideshow to the main story.
Yeah. Well, it's because of the pure spectacle of, look how many Hugo Weavings are on screen.
Yeah, I think it's almost a certain, like, illusion that he's on screen a lot more than he is just because we see his face or his CGI face so much.
Sure.
But even in this one, like, what does he...
He's got two scenes. I think he's literally got two scenes.
He's taking over the Matrix.
Yeah.
And like
he succeeds.
I feel like
he wins.
Yeah, I feel like the Bane aspect of Smith was by far the most interesting.
Yeah, Ian Bliss just nailing it with his Hugo Weaving impression.
Yeah, and even just that whole fight was pretty compelling. I think really, if anything, that was the most interesting part of Smith. And I still don't fully understand it.
It doesn't.
But I'm just accepting. I'm accepting that I don't fully understand it, and I'm okay that I don't fully understand it. I don't even think I really want to understand it.
If the humans have machinery in them, then I guess there's room for a program to hijack your brain. I don't know.
And what's funny is that I feel like this conversation has been largely pretty negative. But I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
I do think it wraps things up quite neatly or satisfyingly. I feel like most of the characters are taken to their conclusion, and it may be like the cheesiest possible ending that, like, Neo dies so we can all live, but that's what they were going for from day one, mostly. Like.
I mean, he's literally Jesus Christ.
He dies in a Christ pose.
I mean, I think probably the most interesting thing about these sequels is that they almost seem like a $400 million exercise in refuting the whole, like, destiny thing in the first one. Like, he literally says, because I choose. Like, and it was almost like they got, like, cold feet about how, like, faith and heavy that first one was. And they were like, okay, let's calm down on destiny and people being, like, caught up in fate and things like that. That's not the point of this.
You see Morpheus is, like, really sullen throughout this one. He doesn't quite know what to do because, his faith was broken at the end of the second one, and he lost his ship, and he doesn't really know what to do with himself. I thought that was all.
But they don't really spend a lot of time on it. It doesn't feel, at the end of the day, it feels not even secondary. It feels... And
then I feel like Niobe...
Some word for tenth that I don't understand, or that I don't know.
Yeah.
It's tenth-dary.
Sure. I don't know after tertiary, I'm afraid. Yeah, like Niobe sort of jabbing him and quoting him to himself to sort of, like, snap him out of it or whatever. I don't know. Trinity has to die, of course, because Neo must walk into the Machine City alone. I do really like the scene with them flying towards 01 and, like, him unleashing this torrent of missiles, and no one's been within 100 kilometers in 100 years or whatever, and him just pushing them through it, but he can't do it, so they have to go up, and you see the sky for a moment, and it's all very pretty and well shot and everything.
Yeah, I think actually my favorite part of this is Neo and Trinity's journey, both the fight with Bane, ending up in the sky, and there's definitely a certain amount of cliche. I mean, I don't feel like Trinity was fridged so much, especially since they both fucking died, and it wasn't like there was 2 hours of screen time between death. Like, no. Neo dies essentially 15 minutes later,
and it wasn't like used as a way to, like, hurt Neo or anything like that. It's, obviously he was devastated by it, but that term is normally taken for, like, when it's used as a way to hurt a man or whatever. And I feel this was just, he had to go in there alone, and, like, what else are you going to do with her, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I even interpret it as just kind of like this was a suicide mission from beginning to end.
Oh yeah, I think they even said that. I think she said to him, or they had a conversation like they're not coming back. Like,
yeah, and her death was, I think, filmed pretty beautifully. Definitely was the most emotional moment of probably the entire series, which was funny because, again, it feels like not a ton of time was invested in the Trinity Neo actual relationship. I feel like them being just partners in the first one who have to save Morpheus. I feel like that there was more time devoted there.
Fleeting glances, and then in the second one, it's just like they bang a lot, and then he saves her from death.
It feels more like an idea that they're telling us, and to a certain extent, they're showing us how much they care because they keep telling us how much they care. Like they literally, but they're not.
And remember, Mike, the key difference in this cycle of the Matrix is that Neo specifically loves Trinity. Love has saved us all.
Yes.
And
So was the idea that these other previous ones just didn't love? I mean, did they not have? I guess
believe
that was the idea.
The Oracle introduced in this cycle, or hinted him more down the route of an intense love for one person, and that allowed him to, I guess, focus more. I don't know, or be more irrational about it and choose the illogical thing of trying to save her versus all of humanity.
Yeah, but I think, once again, the emotion of that scene really works quite well.
I like the Deus Ex Machina. I like that it's the face of a baby, and then it's got this really angry, petulant, how dare you kind of thing about it, and then it reluctantly accepts. I thought that was... it's different than how you see a lot of these, the leader of the machines type dealios.
Yeah, I didn't really... I kind of just, was taking it in.
Yeah.
It was almost like I didn't have an opinion on it. I was just this is the thing that's happening.
The physical, design of 01, it's all very... I mean, because the sun's out, there's no sun, so it's all very dark, and it's all blues and sort of lightning, and so you can't really make anything out, but I do like the sort of baby face with the super deep voice.
Yeah, and I believe it was Kevin Michael Richardson, who's a pretty prolific voice actor. Does a lot of Batman stuff, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, there we go.
He is, if you've seen a cartoon with a black dude with a very deep voice, it was probably Kevin Michael Richardson, but equally very high-pitched voices, so who knows who it is. What do you think of the Neo-Smith fight at the end? Because it's kind of our only...
Boring and stupid.
Yeah. Neo's broadly winning, and then he just stops broadly winning and lets himself lose.
Superman versus Zod. It is, it's kind of similar. There's that great point in the Jack Sparrow Barbossa fight at the end of the first Pirates of the Caribbean, and Barbossa's like, Jack, what the fuck are we doing? We're both immortals. Nothing bad. We're not going to be able to kill each other. This is so stupid. Yeah. And
you should give up then. I like they at least gave the lip service as to why 9 million Smith clones aren't attacking at once. He's like, I've seen it, I'm the one that kills you, so only I will be fighting you. It's like, okay dude, whatever you say.
Sure. Sure.
And also he has magic powers because he's the Oracle one. Speaking of which, the Oracle, different actress.
Yeah.
Gloria Foster died.
I almost feel like it would have been better if the Oracle was just missing.
Yep. They should have you should have maybe seen Seraph said Smith's trying to get to her, I keep moving her, and then you just have it revealed that Smith off camera took her over, and it's like, oh yeah, he does do a full on evil laugh when he takes her over. I was like, oh okay, if that's what you want to do. I don't really like it when characters are recast like this. I would rather you just, even if it's kind of contrived, I'd rather you wrote around it and just... Because, I mean, she was such a big part of the first one. She had her scenes in the second one. Did you really, really, really need her to appear in this one? Could her lines and information conveyed by her not have come from other sources?
It would have felt very easy to write her out. I didn't feel like she needed to be in this film. No. I don't... If anything, it would have been thematically consistent with Morpheus's journey of being everything we've been staking our faith on has been complete bullshit to one extent or another.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like it would have been more consistent for her not to appear at all, and then the recasting kind of just really threw a lot of shade on it. I mean, I think, again, this seems really negative.
I know.
I swear I watched the movie, I was like, hey, that was pretty good. Why have I been so hard on this in my memory?
I think because if you look at the raw components, a lot of it isn't that compelling. The first 30 minutes aren't really... The Siege of Zion is a bit underwhelming. That being said, I do like the way the Sentinels swarm. That's a really good way.
They fight very logically.
Yeah, and also they're really terrifying, the way they come at you in this big shape. And I really like the visual of when Mifune's gunning at them and they're falling out by the hundreds, but they're still coming at him because of the way they're doing it. I thought that was all cool.
Yeah. It was one of those things where they fight so logically. I was like, how are they possibly going to lose?
They're not.
So I think that was. So I thought that was done well, where it really seemed like virtually impossible, and it was.
Yes. I don't know. I wonder if, would it have been satisfying to? I don't know. Just that final fight. I kind of, in some ways, wish they'd just really, really, really gone hard on it and just done the most impressive one-on-one fight scene they've done in the whole series. But that fight scene they have in the subway in the first movie is so good, and the Morpheus Neo training fight is so good. It would have been hard to top either of those, but it is a pretty underwhelming one because they lean so heavily into the flight and stuff. But this is the corner they wrote themselves into once they decided to do sequels after he can fly and stop bullets. It's why would he do all this crazy kung fu when he just fly at you at 100 miles an hour and punch you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was kind of part of the brilliance of the Bane stuff, was that it stripped Neo of the least interesting aspects of who he was. Yeah, I don't know. I almost think they should have come up with a way of that was the climactic payoff. It's, what a twist it would have been that, all this crazy kung fu and the whole thing premise comes down to, Smith in a body double essentially versus Neo without their powers. And I know maybe in some ways that would have felt less consistent, but I don't know. I feel like that would have been more satisfying.
Yeah. Definitely my favorite stuff in this film is Neo and Trinity heading to 01, fighting Bane, the death scene, the talking to Deus Ex Machina, and then that's my favorite stuff in this for sure.
But I think what's kind of interesting is that I think we've been talking about what kind of things we want to cover on this podcast, and I think the thing that makes The Matrix interesting is that it does feel like this singular, complete vision. Yeah, and I think in an age where that is becoming less and less common, both in terms of things ever ending and things being, a filmmaker's true idea of what they want, it was definitely refreshing to watch this and just feel like, hey, this is an author writing a book from beginning to end, and it doesn't feel like a totally different author or something taking over halfway through. Yeah,
this third one the whole way through feels like this is the end. We're not being cute here and leaving doors open, even though there are rumblings that they're going to continue it and all this sort of stuff. But it didn't just feel like the third one of these. It did feel like everything is coming to an end. Because at the end of the second one, when he makes his choice to not save everyone or save a select few, that's the door is open. The genie's out of the bottle. This is the end. We are in it now, and it felt like that the whole way through. So that I would say that's a strength for it. And I remember coming away from it being like, what, that was cool. The Matrix, that's the whole story. I'm done with it. That's great. It's just if you watch it in a bubble, I'm not sure it's a great film.
No, I mean, I would say it's definitely not. In fact, I don't even know if there's anything this movie does great at all besides probably Trinity's death.
I like the sheer spectacle of all those missiles going at that ship and then them all just blowing up right in front of them. As a sort of bombastic, large-scale scene, I kind of dig that. But yeah, nothing else in it is amazing. There's no... the first two, there's a bullet point list of the iconic scenes, and I don't think this film really has one. There's no freeway chase. There's no, we've said how the Burly Brawl doesn't look good, but it was still a thing everyone remembers. There's definitely no freeway chase. There's no the lobby fight and the dodging and the training and all that from the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of an interesting way of thinking about it, is that there is value in watching The Matrix Reloaded outside of the context of The Matrix. Granted, not a lot of it will make sense to you, but not a lot of it made sense to a lot of people who did know. Yeah. So there is no value in this film except for closure with the trilogy.
It depends entirely upon the other two. Yeah. The second one, it's a sort of simplistic way to look at it, but the second one's pure action, the third one's pure story is kind of the quickest way to sum them up, even though the second one has the single largest info dump potentially in cinematic history. This one seems to be more about closing the narratives and we're done with just fancy slow motion bullet dodging. This is about the people and the real lives and all that. It's just they didn't do enough to invest us in anyone who wasn't the top 4. And I feel like they try and add Niobe in there to make it the top 5, but she doesn't connect in the same way Neo, Trinity, Morpheus, and Smith do. So
yeah, and and I was still very struck how Morpheus does virtually nothing.
Yeah, well, he's a broken man. He's lost his faith. His whole life was about the one, and then Neo's like, "No, we're fucked, man. Like, sorry."
Yeah, Link also. I mean, it almost feels like they cut and run in some ways from a bunch of stuff they introduced.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to the architect, which I think is probably something we need to address, is that after his big scene, which was the talk of the town, for better or worse, he literally is in this movie for, 45 seconds at the end?
Yeah.
When it's all over?
When it's just programs and every human in the Matrix is dead. Fight me if that is not what you think happened, anyone. He does say to Neo, "We won't meet again." So I guess he just sort of hangs out in his room. He doesn't really do things. He just shows up to talk to the Oracle. Sati makes the sun come out. There's a bench that says "In memory of Thomas Anderson." You'll have to take my word on that.
I believe you. I missed that, but I believe you.
I think everyone missed that.
So we've watched The Matrix in context now. Yes. We've got some other stuff to talk about, but how are we feeling?
The Matrix one it's iconic. It's an all-time amazing film. Whatever list of whatever films are the best ever or the ones you need to see before you die, it's definitely on there. 2 and 3, I feel, are cultural punching bags in a lot of ways. It's like, didn't the sequels suck? I like the second one. I think it's got a lot of goofy shit in it. I like some of that goofy shit. This third one, I think it's a fitting ending. I think it sticks the landing better than a lot of trilogies and long-term stories do. You can't really say that it didn't give you an ending because it definitely does. It's weird because once upon a time I was fucking obsessed with The Matrix, and I said it when we did the Matrix 1 episode, I've probably seen The Matrix north of 30, maybe south of 50 times. And I've seen the sequels quite a lot as well, and it's weird to watch them now and not have that intense oh my god, I love this feeling that I once did. I appreciate the first one, and just as an exercise in filmmaking more than I would have done when I was just cool, look at all this dumb martial arts bullshit that I love. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting the Wachowskis kind of failed to even come close to recapturing some of this. I mean, I feel they got sort of typecast, and then they also tried to break away from it, and then I don't know, I'm just surprised that the people that made this and Bound and stuff, what are your feelings on the overall?
I think this exercise has definitely confirmed that The Matrix, is
good.
Yeah. It is a generational movie. It is something that if you want to pick one film from the 90s and be this is the film, you only could pick one film a decade, I would be completely comfortable with The Matrix being that one film from the 90s. It is just kind of breathtaking in a lot of ways. Yeah. I don't think anyone should be claiming, no one should be claiming that it's wholly original or anything like that.
But it really, still feels it felt a very...
It feels that way. It felt like something you had never seen before.
And it felt confident.
Maybe there are issues with that other people who are more informed want to talk about, but it still feels that way now.
It felt confident and realised and solid and three-dimensional in a way that a lot of new IPs are not capable of doing. And everything is a bit homogenous now. And, arguably a lot of things look a bit like The Matrix now, but I don't think anything looked like this when this came out. And they had a world for a while, and it was a mega fucking franchise that got all this spin-off material, some of which we'll talk about next week. Yeah, I still don't know how I feel about them potentially revisiting this world, regardless of who writes it and who's in it and all this sort of stuff.
And I think really nothing that happened in these sequels can kind of ruin that.
Yeah.
And I say that as someone who likes both sequels.
I think it's very difficult to talk about this third one without being negative for because I do if we divide everything down the middle of I like this, I don't like this. I do like this film. It's just every talking point has a natural sort of negative flow to it, but it is still. Yeah. I still enjoy this movie.
and the sequels just are deeply, deeply flawed films. If I were to point maybe just to one thing, I would say you can compare. I think it's really about the action, in that the first one, there was a real violence and sense of danger to the action that was missing.
Yes.
In the sequels.
Yeah, like we talked about it last week, that like Neo obviously has no reason to fear anything, but it no longer feels like Morpheus is in danger, or Trinity is in danger, or Niobe is in danger. You know, they all suddenly feel like world beaters, and that agents are just punk asses who no one should be that scared of. In that first one, they do an amazing job of, you know, no one has ever fought an agent and lived. Like, you must run, you must hide. Like, you know, their guns, like, kick like a fucking mule, and, like, they just wipe the floor with everyone who encounters them, and Neo has to fight so hard to beat Smith, and then Smith just pops right back up. Like, it's all so well done. And then they're just kind of cast aside, and, you know, maybe it's taking away, maybe it's separating Smith from the agents, and they don't have the confidence to, like, or they didn't feel they had the screen time to give another agent who is, like, a little bit more of a, like, you know, talky-talk guy, like a charismatic person, in the same way that Hugo Weaving was their sort of mouthpiece in the first one. I don't know, but yeah, it all feels like the difficulty level has been lowered in the second two, and that definitely hurts it, because that's what you want in a fight scene. You want to feel that sense of danger, and that, like, your protagonists can lose. Otherwise, what are we doing? Okay, well then, this has been 3 episodes of the Sky Scorchers. We will be back next week to do the Animatrix, which is a collection of animated films made by various filmmakers. The Wachowskis are slightly involved. I don't think in all of them, but they have sort of overseeing capacity. But it's an exercise in seeing what different filmmakers do with their material. So we'll give that a watch and come back next time. And then episode 5 will be Dark City, obviously. We'll watch that.
I feel like I did not agree to that.
Well, surprise.